Hello, hi, welcome everyone. We appreciate you being here. I'm pretty excited about this presentation today. We're going to be talking about achieving world-class maintenance, and we're going to be unveiling level 5 of the maintenance maturity model. So before we dive into the webinar, let's review a few ways that you all can participate during the webinar. So throughout, if you have any questions, you can type them into the little question feature. Also, if you want to comment on anything, click on the chat icon and post your comments there. We will be asking audience questions during the webinar, and we will be looking for your responses in the chat. We will also have Q&A time at the end and be looking in the question feature to answer those. Okay, so let's kick this off by practicing using the chat feature. So in the chat, let us know where you are joining us from.
We already have a bunch of people. They already started. They knew what you were going to say.
Good. We're reliable. We do the same thing every time.
Yep. Mexico, Illinois, Kansas, Cali, Jersey, more Cali, Ohio, Hawaii. We got Baltimore, Maryland. Dwayne Smith. I'm in Baltimore.
Brian's in
Baltimore.
Arabia,
Egypt, Kenya, San Diego. Wow, we've got a big.
I live in Oregon, but currently I'm up in Washington, over here on the West Coast.
UK, Ontario. A lot of good arm wrestlers in Ontario.
Nice. Okay, well, we are glad you are all here, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm happy to introduce ourselves today. So my name is Amissa, and this is my colleague, Brian. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. For those of you who don't know, I'm Brian. I'm the head of community and partnerships for UpKeep. I've been a heavy equipment mechanic, a field service mechanic, a maintenance manager, a director of maintenance and reliability, an executive, a consultant, and now I work with UpKeep. So know a lot about CMMS and a lot about doing the work. Go ahead, Amissa.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so like I said, my name is Amissa. I'm a senior marketing manager here at UpKeep. I've been with UpKeep for 2 years and recently became CMRP certified through SMRP. Some relevant working experience I have early on in my career journey. I did work as a manufacturing technician in a semiconductor plant, so I remember what it was like to be an equipment operator and also what happened when we had unexpected downtime events. Okay, so for today's webinar, first we're going to dive into an overview of what the maintenance maturity model is. Then we'll go into specifically focusing on level 5, which is achieving world-class maintenance. And we're going to cover topics like uptime management, RCM, asset performance, and more. Then we'll close with some Q&A time, like I mentioned. So we created the maintenance maturity model to help teams evaluate where they currently are and what steps are needed to get to the ultimate goal of a world-class maintenance program. So level 1, if you've joined us for the past couple months at our webinars, we've been reviewing all these, and this time we're at level 5. But level 1 is from pen and paper to CMMS. So this is a team that still uses paper and pencil to track maintenance tasks. Generally, one person fields phone calls, writes the call notes on paper, assigns work orders through another phone call or with paper jobs. Also, this team often uses spreadsheets to manage day-to-day scheduling. Level 2 is CMMS implementation. So at this level, a team has achieved a successful basic implementation of a computerized maintenance management system. And the team has identified how they will use it, and they implement workflows and roll it out to their team. Level 3 is successful CMMS adoption. This is a team that is using their computerized maintenance management system to understand what they need to work on and beginning to gain some valuable insights into how they can become more efficient. Level 4, reliable data and defined KPIs. So at this point, historical data is used to understand where and how the team is spending their time, which assets require the most attention, and what the ultimate impact to the bottom line is. And then level 5, which we're talking about today, world-class maintenance. The success at this level is no longer just about the number of work orders completed, but also about managing and maintaining the uptime of equipment. So During today's webinar, we will be diving into this level, but if you missed our webinars on level 1 through 4, you can find the recordings on our website and on YouTube. And we also have our colleague, Kobe, he's in the chat, so he'll post links to access some of those resources. All right, let's dive into level 5. So maintenance teams, as I've said before, we know are crucial to a company's bottom line. And we believe that they can be a team that is recognized as a revenue contributor rather than a cost center. And we want to empower you all to aim for world-class maintenance. World-class maintenance is when maintenance and reliability teams have transcended routine maintenance tasks and are focused on strategies for sustaining uptime efficiently. So before we jump in too far, I think it's important to first review some of the world-class maintenance benchmarks that we'll be addressing and talking about today. So we're going to be talking about OEE, and this is a measure of how well a manufacturing process is performing in terms of availability, performance efficiency, and quality. We're also going to be talking about availability, which measures the percentage of time that equipment is capable of production during planned production time. We're going to be looking at mean time to repair, which is the average time it takes to repair a failed component or equipment and restore it to normal operation. We'll address work order schedule compliance, which measures the percentage of work orders that are completed within the scheduled time frame. We're going to look at work order effectiveness ratio, which evaluates the effectiveness of work orders by comparing planned versus unplanned maintenance activities. We're going to talk about mean time between failure, which is the average time elapsed between consecutive fails of a system or component. And we're also going to be talking about failure modes, effects, and analysis, which is a systematic method for evaluating potential failure modes of a system, determining their causes and effects, and identifying preventative actions. Whew, I feel like that was a lot. All right. Okay, so let's look at step 1, which is elevating uptime management. One of the best ways to upgrade your uptime management strategy is to implement condition-based maintenance, where you are using real-time monitoring systems to get ahead of breakdowns before they happen. This is very important to minimize downtime. Brian, what's your experience with elevating uptime and condition-based maintenance strategy?
So condition-based maintenance is something that's very valuable in taking operating context into the equation. So you're not just looking at something solely as it's running, it's not running. You're looking at what are the mechanisms and potential risk and potential failures that could affect the uptime or availability of this asset, and how do we systematically address, reduce, or eliminate them. And one thing I want to note on here for your with purpose, right, is minimize downtime, maximize equipment availability. But the biggest thing you can do, and the most cost-effective thing other than planning and scheduling, of course, is ensure your design operating context. If you can maintain a machine to the best standard in the entire universe, but if it is not operated correctly, operated within its capacity, then it will never give you the availability that is needed. So it's arguable. You can make the argument and say that operating a machine is just as important, if not more important, than maintaining it for availability and for uptime.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. All right, step 2. We're going to be talking about strategic work order prioritization and creation of those. So one key thing to keep in mind about prioritizing work orders is that it needs to come from a place of aligning to the higher organizational goals. And then risk-based prioritization is recommended at this step, married with criticality of assets. Brian, what is your recommendation here, like the best way to prioritize work orders?
So risk is very important, right? And based on your business, we go about assigning risk or criticality somewhat differently, right? We can either use the component approach, the asset approach, the operational approach, the single point of failure approach. And all of those are good, or there's no right or wrong way, right? As long as you're addressing failure modes and failure mechanisms. And I want to point one thing out here, which is failure mode directed tasks and preventive maintenance. So we talk about schedule compliance, very valuable. Are we doing the work when it should be done and blah, blah, blah. But more importantly, are we doing the right work? And is the work that we're doing on an appropriate schedule within compliance the right work to be doing that is addressing a potential risk or failure? So I really want to hit on that. Like you can have all the PMs in the world, but if you're doing too many PMs and you're not yielding any corrective work, that's a problem. And if you're doing a whole bunch of PMs and you're addressing a whole bunch of corrective work, well, that's also a problem, right? It's a balance. So we want to make sure that our directed tasks are at and aimed at something. So we're gaining value from our preventive maintenance and working towards that RCM culture, that failure mode and defect elimination culture. And of course, your organizational goals, huge. You got to make sure you're doing the right things that align with your business.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Speaking of RCM, that's where we kind of dive into that a little bit more here in step 3. So step 3 is about RCM. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, it's reliability-centered maintenance. It's a systematic approach to managing equipment reliability that involves a thorough understanding of the failure modes, consequences, and proactive measures needed to ensure optimal performance. So the first key action needs to be failure mode and effects analysis, then proactive maintenance strategies can be built based on that information. Brian, what tips do you have for us when developing a reliability-centered maintenance program?
So the first thing I'll say is reliability-centered maintenance is not an endpoint. It's a journey. It's a continuous journey that essentially will never end because you're constantly learning, you're constantly evaluating, you're constantly optimizing, constantly failing, and building upon all of those things. But I want to take note to failure mode and effects analysis. Failure mode and effects analysis is extremely valuable, but it is most valuable in the design phase. So I'll just leave you with that. If you have the potential and the opportunity to design machines for your unique operation, do failure mode and effects analysis. It's far more valuable then than it is on the other end of it.
Okay. Step 4, we aim for asset performance excellence. So in order to minimize failures and extend asset lifetime, it's necessary to look at OEE and mean time between failure and use these industry benchmarks as a guide for success. So you can evaluate your asset lifecycle management needs and do improvement in order to hit those goals. Brian, what's your thoughts about this?
So I think OEE is a very great identifier of your capacity assurance from a maintenance standpoint, right? Am I able to meet the demands of the business? OEE can be difficult to track, right? Especially if you're not using any type of PLC integrated software that's managing interruptions, stoppages, whether planned or unplanned, all those things. But it's a very good compass, if you will, to understand how well you're doing work. And then, we want to always look at extending asset life and life cycle management. So by using all the past, present, and potential condition-based information that you're gathering on your assets all the time, we want to be making strong and informed decisions about where we want to be with our assets. So like level 5, like mastering maintenance, maturity, and world-class maintenance, it's like a mountain to climb, right? So the more tools and the more alignment and better culture you have and all of these things within the asset performance excellence, the better chance you stand to continue that culture as you move forward and progress to even higher things.
Right.
Greg Christensen asked, hold on, miss that. Greg Christensen
okay.
asked the question. Greg Christensen, the podcast host of CMMS Radio, also an UpKeep ambassador. Ahmed is also in the chat. Ahmed is a partner of UpKeep. He's great. Go check him out on the maintenance community. He's the man over there. But meantime to repair is extremely valuable, Greg, because what it does is it shows that you have a consistent growth in how well you're performing maintenance, and that the time it takes to restore performance, it gets less and less and less. And this comes from appropriate tasks, checklists, standardization, training, and manpower. So all of those things grow and become optimized as you move up through your maintenance maturity level if you're doing the right things.
That's a great question. No, that's totally fine. All right. So step 5, this is the final step that we're going to talk about today to achieving world-class maintenance. And it's about having a culture of continuous improvement. Brian has touched on it a little bit already, but a few ways to up-level your culture of continuous improvement at your organization is to make sure you have continuous training programs. These should be regular and targeted, addressing evolving technologies and best practices. And it's also important to have some sort of knowledge sharing platform where team members can have knowledge sharing sessions, access to mentorship programs, and cross-functional learning opportunities. My personal favorite tip for improving culture is making sure there are career development opportunities and a clear pathway to achievement based on certification, skills, and contributions to the team. Brian, what is your advice for advancing a culture of continuous improvement?
So we've talked about a lot of steps, and when Namissa and I were talking about what we wanted to present here today, one thing we agreed on is that within all these steps, there are so many intricate little steps that have to be done right in order to even get to step 1 of world-class maintenance, right? There's 100 things that have to be right. And then to get to 2, there's another 100 things, right? So it's just ensuring that every day you're stepping back and you're looking at your business holistically. You're thinking about the decisions that you want to make with your assets or your team or your culture or in alignment with the business. So it's really just looking at things holistically, excuse me, and recognizing and aligning where they are and where they need to go. And the one thing I want to say about some of the key actions here in sharing, knowledge sharing platforms, a CMMS is a knowledge sharing platform in itself. People like to view the training, there's a name for it, I forget what they call them, the training document or the training program that people log their training in, right? But a CMMS is a training document. It is an historian and a record, an account, if it's filled out correctly, of an account of an unfolding process. I recognized and came into this failure. This is what I did to complete it. This was the outcome. These are the tools that I've used, right? So it is a knowledge sharing platform when it's leveraged that way. So I recommend that you look at your CMMS up from a lot of different angles, and that is one of them. It's a tool for learning and expanding the education and awareness of your team.
Awesome. All right. So this is a shorter webinar today because we're just covering one level of the maintenance maturity model. But now we're going to wrap up with a conclusion. So these steps we covered serve as a roadmap to propel maintenance operations into a league of excellence where success is measured in the strategic management and sustained uptime of critical assets. Keep in mind, this presentation is just, like Brian said, it's a high-level overview. It doesn't have all the exact details and steps of how to get here. But if you want more detailed guidance, you can download the guide about level 5. I believe Kobe was probably sharing that in the chat. And then, of course, if you're already a customer of UpKeep, you can reach out to your customer success person, and they can help get you on the right track or guide you in the next steps that you might need to take in order to elevate your maintenance program. And then if you're not a customer, we can help you achieve world-class maintenance one small step at a time. Brian, do you have any final thoughts about this webinar today?
So we like to, even us in industry, we like to have a good chuckle about world-class maintenance. It is a very, very difficult, rare thing for organizations to implement, manage, and sustain the things that we're talking about long-term and with a high degree of accuracy. It is a mountain to climb. But don't take this as like the end all be all and this is where you should be. And if you're not here, then you're doing something wrong. That's absolutely not true. Any steps that you take towards any of these things in any capacity is extremely valuable. If you take your overall equipment effectiveness from 20% to 25%, you have done an amazing thing. If your uptime went from 60% to 63%, you've done an amazing thing. So don't let this get you caught up. Keep making the incremental changes and things that you need to do for the best of your business and your culture and your organization, and keep just climbing the ladder. You may never get there. I've never been there. I've been close, but I've never been there. But you have to start and you have to try, right? It's just super important to keep that alive as you work through your maintenance organization and maturity.
Yeah, I definitely, I'll add on to that. I think it's important to know that this is aspirational, right? Like, and every time that you can make any small step of progress towards aspiration is a good thing. So, and valuable. Okay.
I did see one question that I missed, Amissa.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't see the person's name anymore, but
We're on Q&A, so let's, if you have questions, type them into the chat. Brian, why don't you go ahead, review the ones that you're talking about right now?
Sure. So the one I answered Greg's. I missed another one. Someone had asked, how do you manage MTTR in a new facility? So there's a bunch of ways you could go about that, but I think the best way to go about it is to do the job. Try to find ways from a preventive standpoint, right? You're not going to go out and break your machine and try to fix it as fast as you can, but try to get a handle on what's the reality of restoring a machine back to its operating context, which includes your storeroom, your planning process, your scheduling process, right? Your work order communication process from request to approval to, all of these things. So I would really drill down on your preventive processes and understanding how you go about doing your maintenance by taking into things that will affect your MTTR. So keep that in mind. And once you start to delve into your preventive processes and getting a handle on how you're doing maintenance, some of those tendencies, some of those cultural things you find, some of the bad and the good will roll over into how corrective and reactive work is done as well. So it's a bit of a stepped process. So take that into account. If you have engineering team that help design your machines, or you have a communication with the manufacturer, maybe you have detailed work instructions from the manufacturer or from the design team, also always leverage those two. But those things they'll have to be modified on the fly as you move along.
Yeah. Someone did ask if we were going to share out the deck after this. We actually will send out the recording of this presentation afterwards. And there was another question too. It says, if we don't have a robust software for tracking at this time, what other ways can you suggest?
So I'm a huge proponent of whatever is meeting the needs of your business. Okay. Is it recommended to have a software, a CMMS? Sure. Yes. Because it's going to be able to give you, it's the vehicle essentially to bring you somewhere that you want to be. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't manage some maintenance effectively with a spreadsheet or with a Google Doc or something like, or email, right? I'm not saying you can't do that. And sometimes that's what a lot of people are doing. And that's okay if it meets the need that you want. But just know that there are constraints when it comes to managing work that way. And the constraints are going to come in the form of scaling, business trust, gaining insights into how you're performing maintenance and what you're doing. So, you really have to weigh where you want to be. And I'll speak for UpKeep. UpKeep is not expensive. It's extremely valuable platform that can be implemented without an implementation team. It's that intuitive. So if you're considering a software, go download our app. You can use it for 14 days for free. Check it out. See how you like it, right? Check other ones out too. But just know that there is a level of blocker that you will have by managing your maintenance without some sort of software.
Yeah. I noticed Stacy said that they're using UpKeep for maintenance on residential buildings. So it's a little bit different than what we're talking about here. But how does the information we were talking about apply to that scenario?
Sure. So Stacy, just remember, it's not about a CMMS is valuable at managing maintenance, about assets, about things. It doesn't matter what those things are. If I'm talking about managing heavy and mobile mining equipment, all you have to do is substitute buildings, air conditioning, building envelope, structure, concrete, building and grounds in place of the machines, right? And you go about how the nuance is a little different in how you maintain them, but the strategy for how you achieve your data, your planning, all of those things are relatively the same. So if you're looking at UpKeep to use for facilities management, to track all those things, we absolutely have tons of customers that do that, and we can do those things.
Nice. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll. I'm scrolling through all these comments.
Jeremy says, what is the best way to manage and keep track of man-hour, labor utilization, and maintenance? So my first question is going to be, do you have a CMMS or not? If you don't have a CMMS, it's somewhat difficult because you're relying on a manual process for people to fill out their time, clock in and out, and all that stuff, right? If you're using a CMMS, well, we have, and most have, ours is very good. We have your work order times, your time charges. So as soon as you sign on to a work order, you can automate that process to where a timer starts. You can allocate that time to travel time, to parts time, to wrench time, all of those things. And we can report on all of those metrics from start to stop of work orders, start to stop of your day, everything. So manpower utilization, I'll just say this for you, Jeremy, manpower utilization in most maintenance organizations is a very misunderstood thing. It's something that a lot of people, they don't realize how much opportunity is there. And the capacity of your technicians generally is much higher than you may notice because you're not tracking the amount of time that they're turning wrenches or searching for parts or whatever. So if you're using a CMMS, definitely check out UpKeep. We have an awesome time tracking. We can automate a lot of that stuff. So it's very good.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do that with UpKeep.
Yeah. If you are, I say, like, who can I talk to about where we are and where we want to be, see how UpKeep could add value to our process? We'll definitely have someone reach out to you after the webinar, and we can set up a meeting to talk more. Yeah.
Yeah. It can definitely help. You know, one thing that UpKeep has that a lot of our competitors do not have is we actually, the people that work for UpKeep, from our CEO to me to Amissa to our account executives to our BDRs, SDRs, we invest heavily in the education of those people. And, you know, we ensure that a lot of those people are CMRP certified, which I am, Amissa is, a ton of people in UpKeep are, so that we can speak your language. We understand the industry. We understand the best practices, and we can actually guide you. And a lot of us have done your job. You know, you talk to some of these other companies and it's some 25-year-old software kid who was selling laptops before he talked to you about CMMS, right? So with UpKeep, you're talking to people who have done the work and have been around. So just keep that in mind when you're searching for your next platform.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure I understand this question's intent all the way, but it says, mean time to repair is not major KPI for world-class maintenance, ? Maybe you could clarify that, Mohammed?
I think what he's saying is it is a KPI that is looked at for, it has everything to do with downtime, right? Downtime is not just the machine broke and now it's fixed, right? There's MTTR is in between that downtime. MTTR is a necessary KPI to understand to reduce downtime. If a machine breaks and all it takes is to replace a contactor, but a guy's never replaced a contactor before and doesn't have the wiring schematic and doesn't label things when he takes it apart, well, now your MTTR is way higher when you could have replaced the contactor with the appropriate information in 20 minutes. So that's why we talk about MTTR, because it's a contributing factor to availability and uptime and downtime.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. All right, I don't think I see any more questions. If you have any burning last minute questions, type them in. We do have a little bit of extra time today, so we can take the time to answer these. We'll give you a couple more minutes to see if there's any other questions or comments we should touch on.
Am I not seeing the chat change? I can't see the things you saw. Maybe mine's frozen.
Oh, I've just been scrolling through.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know, looking. All right, well, I'm not seeing anything else pop up, so we will go ahead and conclude the webinar. We really do appreciate you all attending. We hope this was somewhat helpful and valuable to you. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you next month at our next webinar. Look out for that invite coming soon.
And if you come to any conferences around the country, check to see if we'll be there and come say hi.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.